This is the final word, Australia-Pakistan Daily, Day 4 from Sydney. Beautiful sunshine. Jeff Lemon, Adam Collins. The show brought to you by CBUS Super. And you, Adam, are going to tell me about everything that happened today in the space of 30 seconds.
All right, Pakistan started at 7 for 68, a lead of 82. They had Rizwan and Jamal there, who looked good for half an hour but fell in consecutive overs. Pakistan all out for 115 in their second dig, leaving Australia 130. Warner got 57 of them, played all the old hits. Labuschagne made 62 not out. Warner didn't hit the winning runs because Sergeant Khan got Kawaja as well at the start. Australia win by 8 wickets. They win it inside 26 overs, and really the David Warner farewell couldn't have gone much better.
It was, I mean, it could only have gone better if they needed 50 more to chase and he was able to get to 100.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. Sajid did his bit, tried hard, took the new ball, opened it up. I mean, there was a little bit there. We said last night it had to be Rizwan and Jamal, and they did carry on for a while. They added 42 together and batted with a bit of enterprise, but it was always going to be difficult for them to be able to put together enough. But they at least gave Pakistan that something. And last night we thought, well, if they get 120 ahead, you can win a test match from there. You've got that.
Yeah.
There's that possibility, and if you can get a wicket early, and they did, they get Kawaja with the most marginal of marginal LBWs, the off spinner around the wicket, turning it. It wasn't really straightening down the line, it was turning down the line. You could see Kawaja's off stump, so I think that's why the umpire gave it out, but it was umpire's call on impact and umpire's call on stump impact, so pad and stumps, 2 yellow lights given on the field, so that remained. And they could have got nervous, Australia. They could have got nervous there, but they didn't. Warner put the foot down, struck a couple of boundaries, played that big reverse sweep, got them going again, and Labuschagne played a much more aggressive, enterprising innings than we've seen from him in a long time.
Yeah, just on the narrow chase, the 130 thing, the awkward fourth innings chase and all the other
Tricky
cliches.
small target.
I realised when watching...
Funny game, cricket.
I realised when watching that Warner hasn't been part of any of those, indeed of any. And by that I mean when Australia have had an awkward little chase, he bats in that way. He bats aggressively and invariably doesn't feel very awkward for very long.
Right.
So today was the 30th anniversary from when Fani de Villiers bowled out Australia here. They were all out for 106 chasing whatever it was, about 117 from memory or something like that. And that was in an era where those things happened far more routinely. You look through David Warner's career, as we all were doing today. He finishes with the 5th most runs for Test openers, 8,800 and a bit, something like
Fourth,
that.
I reckon. He's gone. He's
Cook in first, Gavaskar in second, Graham Smith in third, Gooch in fourth. Now Warner.
But Gooch, not all of his ones were made opening. So if you look at it in terms of runs made as an opener, then Warner's fourth.
That's fair enough. But I'm going to count Gooch because most of his work was done as an opener. So if you look at their strike rates, Cook 47, Gavaskar 43, Smith 60. Gooch 49 and Warner 70. Now, I know Smith and Warner played in a similar era, but that's part of the reason why these 130 or so chases went the way of Australia when he was playing, because so long as he got in, there was so much pressure on the fielding team, they couldn't afford to have 9 men around the bat and doing the thing that might have been possible if you had players that were more conventional and more in keeping with what we've grown to expect watching cricket growing up, that you might creep to a target like that and take no chances whatsoever. Warner had the alternative approach, the reverses, the switch hits today, the attempted reverse lap at one point. I reckon we've seen more of Warner doing that kind of thing in the last 3 test matches than we have in the last 3 years or even the last 10 years. He really became the kind of player who only saved that stuff for 2020 cricket, but yeah, always the innovator, always an enterprising player, to use that term again, that he fed that into his final test series, and that felt appropriate. It also would have felt appropriate had he hit the winning runs, but at least, as I said to him then when interviewing him, he's not leaving in tears like most careers, like most political careers end in tears. Well, Warner's doesn't. It ends with his kids having the time of their lives out on the field, streamers everywhere, all the adulation, all the appreciation of the crowd. Who would have thought that was possible when we were at Newlands back in 2018? It's a pretty special turnaround.
Well, I mean, I suppose there was that point, and I look at that point in time where he might have said, well, screw it, I'm done with trying to play for Australia. I feel hard done by, all the rest of it, and he might have just given it away and gone on the T20 circuit. He spoke extensively about Test cricket in pretty much all of his media spots today. He talked to all the TV networks, all the radio stations, and all the rest of it. And he said in one of the TV spots, they were asking him about the cap that he'd found, and he said, "This is the thing that I want young players to think about. You can achieve this. There is nothing bigger in cricket than to achieve this." And so it is interesting. I'm writing the Warner career career obit, kind of halfway through pondering that at the moment, and that is one of the things that I think stands out, is that someone who came in as a T20 player, played T20 cricket for Australia before playing first-class cricket, was always seen as this new generation brash basher and all the rest of it, is someone who prized Test cricket above everything else in his career, played 112 Test matches, would have played more if he hadn't ruled himself out of the ones that he was suspended for, and that was the most important thing for him, to have to put in the physical effort, the training, the rehab, all the rest of it, to be fit for Test cricket and to take on the more demanding physical task of it. He's like the unlikely champion of Test cricket for someone who's always associated with the short form game.
Yeah, it's really nicely summed up. I asked him a similar question about Test cricket, and his answer was like really upbeat and inspiring. And he wasn't just talking to Aussie kids, by the way. He was talking to kids around the world. He wants Test cricket to be the form that's valued more than any other. He is a smart guy. He's a street smart guy. He appreciates what's going on in the global game, the trends that we talk about all the time on this podcast, and he wants to be part of the rearguard. He wants to be part of the counter-attack for Test cricket on Test cricket's behalf in retirement, in the same way that he's made it so watchable as a player. And look, there are always going to be people, a lot of them, who have a very strong view about David Warner, and that, I think, in many ways predates what happened in Cape Town in 2018.
Yep.
There is a PhD to be written on reactions to David Warner, the human being, and I don't want to get into that right now, but I've got some pretty strong views that I say off camera about the types of people who take umbrage with David Warner for being the type of way he is. And now he's going to go out and be a controversial commentator, right? He's going to be out there giving strong opinions, and that'll cultivate a whole bunch of negative attitudes towards him in the future as well. But it's worth remembering in all of that, he doesn't actually take too much to heart. He's got a very thick skin. You've got to be in this business doing what he does, and he's well beyond what happened in 2018. I don't think there'll be the tell-all book. I don't think there'll be the here's what happened in the dressing room at Newlands. He's happy to carry that with him, even though he has kind of alluded to the truth setting him free one day. It's not going to be setting him free anytime soon. And I think that's commendable as well, that he's going to carry that with him as his price to pay is more than the punishment. It's, a lot of people out there will never accept him, and that's just the way life breaks sometimes.
I understand the negativity towards Warner. I understand that there are, particularly a week like this, it's a valedictory week, people brush over all of that stuff. They brush over all of the negatives. They don't. It's like at a funeral, right? You don't get up and speak ill of the dead. There's that kind of convention. And there are plenty of negatives, and it's not just Newlands, it's not just ball tampering. There are plenty of other points in Warner's career that have been pretty ugly and pretty unfortunate. And that's real, right? You can you can remember those things. You can put those to the forefront if you want, or you can kind of come back to the line that we've come back to a lot of times, which is that early Facebook relationship status, it's complicated, and there's more to it. There are negatives, there are positives, and I think you can look at that whole picture and not be all hooray celebration heroics, and not be all he's terrible and the worst person ever to play the game. So there's a lot of binary stuff, but I think it's reasonable in the week of his last test to celebrate what he did achieve, which is play 112 tests for Australia, make 26 test hundreds, make his 37th half century today. It's a massive career. It's a hugely influential career, and I think it's okay to pay tribute to that. Yeah,
I think that last word's important, influential. Like, he has given a lot of young people a pathway. And he said it, I think on the big screen, wasn't it, with Mark Howard, that kids who want to be white ball players and hone those skills, there is room for them in Test cricket. He's shown that. So I think that might end up being his legacy, more than any of the numbers, impressive as they are. The 22nd most Test runs ever, mentioned the strike rate already, the relative record compared to other openers. It's going to be that he has shown a way. And in a world where there are competing interests, we want people who love the game and who want to focus on, who are gifted enough to play professional, that is, who are capable to be T20 plunderers, and good luck to them for it. But there is still home for them. There is room for them playing this form as well, and prioritising it where it is possible to.
There's a little link to this Test match, interestingly. Would Saim Ayub have been being picked for Pakistan now if the Warner thing hadn't worked 12 years earlier?
It's a great point. Like, Saim Ayub might go on to play 112 Test matches as well, or he might play 4, but he wouldn't have got 1 if not for players like David Warner. And you think about how old he is right now.
Possible.
He would have been 9 or 10 when Warner burst onto the scene. I don't know how much influence he personally had, but players like that which is why he's been able to play T20 cricket first, then play first-class cricket at a high enough level to reach the Test team. There are some similarities there.
Yeah, so it's interesting. And Pakistan, I mean, it's one of these series where 3-0 doesn't really adequately reflect it. So Pat Cummins won Player of the Series, which I was glad to see because batters always get it, and so I thought Mitchell Marsh was an absolute lock. Cummins 19 wickets at 12 in the series, dominant, 3 fifers on the trot, took important wickets at important times throughout to make sure Pakistan didn't win a test in Melbourne or Sydney. They could have won either of these 2 test matches. They had points in both games, several points in both games where they were on top, and they could have really exerted that pressure on Australia. And each time it was just that the quality of Australia's bowling eventually told. There were collapses, not always full team collapses, but rushes of wickets that set Pakistan far enough back that they weren't able to come back from it. So in the third innings, they should have had this game. They should have got a lead of 200 and something and made it really difficult for Australia. And in Melbourne, the way that they were knocked over towards the end there when they were in with a chance as well, the Australian bowlers were able to produce enough quality at the right times to be able to push Pakistan out of it. But it's 3-0 where Pakistan were well in 2 of the test matches, and even though they were never in Perth as a contest, they did compete at times in Perth.
Yeah, they didn't win sessions in Perth, they won hours. In Melbourne they won sessions, and at different points here it felt like they were winning kind of half a day, but that's never sufficient against Australia. And even this morning, the microcosm of that partnership that built to 42 did look really good. Rizwan and Jamal's better than a test number 8, and Rizwan is clearly the guy that should have been in that side from the outset. They'll reflect on picking Sarfraz ahead of him at the start as an error. But, then Nathan Lyon rocks up with 500 plus test wickets and gets Rizwan caught at leg slip. I don't think we talk enough about David Warner at leg slip either. It is kind of a specialist position that's come back into fashion in the last 10 years, and Warner's been part of that.
And he's a player who made himself a slipper when he wasn't, because he was always prowling around the sort of covers somewhere, inside the circle in white ball terms, because he was so mobile. We saw him at the World Cup where he was so good in the deep. He went out a deep mid wicket. He takes those 2 match turning catches against Sri Lanka out there. The incredible surety of his hands under really high balls in the deep. But in Test cricket, he turned himself into a slipper about halfway through his career. And it's interesting when you look at, say, someone like Smith, who's now creeping up on Mark Waugh in terms of catches taken. Warner, with a similar number of tests played, about 90 catches that he's ended up with, 91 maybe, in Test cricket, compared to Smith, who's pushing up towards 170, into that 170s now. So Warner didn't get the opportunity to take those glut of catches earlier in his career, but since he became a slipper, he became a really good one.
And that's an interesting part of the replacement for himself, not strictly speaking around the catching, but it's part of it, right? They want to have someone who, they put it this way, whoever they pick, they're going to have to replace him at leg slip, and they're going to have to work out how they reconfigure the cordon. And we know, learning from what we've seen in the past, that when you change a cordon, it can take a while for them to settle again. So that'll be part of the conversation around the Windies when we get to Adelaide in a couple of weeks. Well, you, not me, but I'm not actually doing that test. I'm back in the UK, but there'll still be daily shows from that series. With the replacement to Warner question, we've been banging on about Stephen Smith replacing him for ages. I see that it's picked up some wide attraction to the point where he was asked about it on the ABC last night, Steve Smith, and he is extremely open to being the test opener. I think we all assumed that it's a good idea in theory, in the abstract, moving Steve Smith there. But if you put it on a whiteboard, it feels quite elegant. Cameron Green goes into 4. You and I thrashed this out a few days ago, but Smith will never do it. He'll never want something like that. He won't want to move too far from the tram track that he's happy playing in at the moment, even if his returns have been somewhat diminishing of late, acknowledging that we had a bit of a go at him last night. But he says himself, this is something that he's quite keen on. And I asked Marnus Labuschagne about it after play, and Marnus is like, yeah, he can see it too. Okay. So this isn't just kind of like a vibesy, you and me on the podcast kind of thing. And Pete Lawler wrote a piece during the week that went to it as well. This is now a thing. It's entirely possible, with Steve Smith's consent, that he could become the next Australian opener. And that would mean Green comes in at 4, and that's the best possible solution to the slipper problem, because Green might be the best gully to ever play the game, and they'll find a way to make that work. Who knows, he might even go in the first slip. I'm sure he'd do perfectly fine there. However, I suspect Gully would be...
Well, Green could be first and second slip, effectively.
What would you do there if he's the best gully ever, would you put him in first slip because more balls are going to end up with him? And is that how you do it? Or do you go Kawaja first, Smith second, Green prowling third, and Gully?
Probably Kawaja first, because usually Kawaja's third and Warner's been in first, so you've got to find a first slip. But yeah, if you're bringing Green back in, I guess you've got Marsh who can go into third if you need one, or first. You often have the tall player at first slip with the wider reach, so it might be Marsh at first, Smith 2, Kawaja 3, Green Gully is how I'd see it. And Green at 4, I don't mind that because, he does take his time. I think Green needs to develop some more confidence because he so often comes out in a really defensive mindset in Test cricket, and he still bats like a 20-year-old, even though he's like 24 now. He still bats like the new kid who's trying to find his way, but he's played enough Test cricket that he doesn't deserve that latitude for finding his way anymore.
And the other option still remains Labuschagne, and again, this came up after play, and he's like, well, I'll do whatever the team wants me to do. And the follow-up was kind of like, well, Andrew McDonald's kind of hinted it might be you, and he's like, if they want it, that's fine, but I'm extremely happy at 3. Pair of 60s in this game. He looks really good today, Labuschagne. He looked the best I've seen him for quite a while, probably since when he saved that test at Manchester, just in terms of the aesthetic of the way he was playing the ball, the way he was using his feet. He said something to us about the bat swing. I had to detect that, but he feels like the bat's coming down straighter than it was before, so he's humming nicely moving into the second half of the summer. Then they'll have that recalibrated top 6 and then on to New Zealand, and on it goes.
It could be this could be Hall of Fame, but Marnus really wasn't reading the room today. The number of times he took a run off the last ball or the fifth ball of the over when Warner's just gone past 50, and it's like people just want to watch Warner bat at this point. And yes, I know you've got a Test match to win and all the rest of it, but once you've got 30 or 40 runs to win, you're probably pretty safe at that stage. He was really going after it. He was monstering boundaries. He was smashing them through the covers, and then he was pinching the strike. And it was like, I mean, I know you don't want to fully KL Rahul it to manipulate everything, but maybe sometimes you just block out the last couple.
You're going to get some nasty comments, Jeff,
as we
move to the final word.
That's not how you play cricket.
The final word Hall of Fame is brought to you by CBUS Super. As I open my phone in a really clumsy way. 40th anniversary of CBUS Super. We have said so much about them through the course of this series, and we're proud to do so. Be it their returns, be it their dedication to where they make their investment in the industries where most of their 900,000 members come from, be it the insurance that's been a part of their offering from the get-go, be it the way they recruit more people into the fund and that collective strength of that investment that they can make around the country. This is CBUS. This is what they do. This is why superannuation is an elegant solution to a complicated public policy problem that goes back decades now. And CBUS are at the forefront of that, with trade unions and workers and employers working in concert, working together, collaboration.
Collaboration.
That's not the bad way, not the sort of Vichy France way.
No.
Collaboration.
No. None of that.
Here.
No Marshal Pétain.
No.
Whose name sounds eerily close to another French word, which is less complimentary.
He bad.
Yeah.
CBUS good.
CBUS good.
Less Vichy France.
Less Vichy.
More industry super.
Yeah.
CBUSSuper.com.au. 8.99%. Average return across 40 years in their default My Super Fund. Their past performance, as good as it is no reliable indicator on future performance. The Final Word Hall of Fame documents our Final Word moment of the day. Jeff, you go first and I've got a few.
I think I'm just going to go wholesome today. I really liked that they let the crowd out onto the SCG for the presentations
so
today.
Good. They did it at Melbourne last week too. Why did we not do this in every Test match everywhere?
Well, I mean, some of them, there'd be nobody left to come on the ground. But here it worked really well. And 37,000 in yesterday. I think it was, did we crack 30 today? The previous days were all 30 plus. Good crowds in Sydney. The weather played ball today. So they sort of roped off a wedge of the ground where the podium was. They could get up and do the presentations and have the players come in and out of their race to the dressing rooms and so on without having to go through crowds of people. But on the other sides of the triangle, I think we were talking Pythagoras last night, the crowd was able to come in, get up to the rope, get closer to the presentation, see it happen, hear it, and it was lovely. The streamers went off, and then you got all the little kids of the players running out and playing in the streamers. It was very wholesome stuff, and it's moments like that make me feel good about cricket.
Yeah, you're reminded that this dressing room, I think they've got more children than players now, or something like that. They've got so many kids in the team. Everyone bar Marnus is in their 30s. I know Marnus is procreated already in his 20s, so it's that kind of vibe. It's very
got on with it early,
very family friendly. Warner's eldest daughter was running around with the streamers all over her body, and having the time of her life. And Mitch Marsh said to us that he remembers doing that kind of thing when his dad was the coach of the Australian team, and there's that link in the chain that continues through. Warner says, hopefully my girls will be inspired to play cricket for Australia themselves one day. I'm like, this is the stuff that that really matters. And I saw Alex Carey have a very relatable moment with his little girl. He was about to run up on stage to the trophy lift, or still, with the team, and then his daughter started bawling her eyes out when he was trying to put her down. He's like, what am I going to do? That's the trophy lift. Called for his wife, who sprinted over and grabbed her, bawling when she was taken away from Daddy, which was, sad and nice at the same time. It was my daughter Peggy's first birthday today, and had a lovely morning with her before coming into the SCG, and I'm really glad in a way the game's finished early enough that I'll see her before she has to tuck away and go to bed herself. But that family thing is real. It's not confected, and I think it's part of the maturity of this team. And we spoke about Warner earlier, and the challenges that dressing room had. It was a very different dressing room there, and I don't think that's a correlation thing. I think that's a causation thing. Right. Kind of, as a generation, kind of got their act together at the same time, off the field as well as on.
Yeah, so that felt good. I mean, Pakistan being competitive felt good. I think they've won a fair bit of goodwill for the way they played through this series, and the spirit in which it was conducted, and Shan Masood up on the stage presenting Warner with Babar Azam's Test shirt that they'd all signed. One of those nice sort of gestures of respect between the teams.
Like the Brisbane one with the lion.
I still think that was a nice thing to do. Everybody else is very cynical about that, but occasionally I'm less cynical than others.
It was funny. I got a few other Warnery bits, well, at least one Warnery bit. He needed 91 not out today to have an average of 45 at the end, and that was on for a while. Marnus was like, yeah, I knew that there was 100, potentially in the offing, but it wasn't the kind of pitch where he could bat that way. He had to bat with a bit of purpose, and so he did, and he ended up overtaking Warner before he was out, I think. But yeah, Warner finishes with an average of like 44.95.
0.57, I think, by the time
whatever it is.
Because he was out, it ended up dropping back down. 44 and a half is, that's a pretty good record to have as a test opener across 100 tests. Yeah,
serious numbers, overtaking VVS Lakshman for test runs today. Sajid Khan, look, it's improbable he'll play test cricket again, or if he does, he's not going to be their frontline spinner. I think we can say that.
Well, he wasn't their frontline spinner here. He came in after two injuries. Abrar Ahmed and Noman Ali were both ruled out of the series.
Yeah, so I don't think he's long for the Test world, but boy, he has a crack. Yeah. Those reviews today, the way that he had Warner trap leg before, and then
the appeal
overturned when it was hitting 49.97% of the stump. Bless him. He was looking at. I think he was talking to Michael Goff, saying, "But so much of the ball. How's that under? How's that? And the fact that he finally got his man Warner at the end felt fitting.
Yeah, it was nailing the bails. The one that was given not out. The umpires hands in their pockets when Warner was batting. By the way, they were not prepared, especially after the Khawaja marginal one. They were like, we don't want to be the guys giving Warner out on an umpire's call here.
Yeah.
I can only assume, not to malign their professionalism, but that would probably be a subconscious influence. Hands in the pockets when appeals went up, and the one that actually got Warner out, Sajid's appeal, I love that. He does the initial appeal and then a secondary appeal, and then he just, nothing happens, and he just gives this frustrated waggle of the hands, and he's like, come on, you have to give that. And indeed they did have to give that because it was smashing leg stump.
It was good. I enjoyed the series. People will look back in 20 years and say Australia beat Pakistan 3-0 again, but I feel sort of more upbeat than I might have done, or certainly more upbeat than I did with the Windies last year. I'm gutted they don't play Test cricket again until August. That's not ideal. They played 2 tests at home against Bangladesh in August and 3 against England at the very end of the year, so it'll be a 6-test year for Pakistan again, which is insufficient, but let's not bang on about that. But I do think that under Shan Masood, who had a bad day today, didn't get it right with the bowling, didn't have Jamal on before lunch. I hope they weren't resting him.
Should have had Salman on earlier as well.
I hope they weren't resting Jamal's body for those T20s in New Zealand. That's my conspiracy theory. I'm slightly worried that's what they were doing once they got off to the flyer.
I don't think so. I mean, he did bowl later on in the piece.
He did bowl later on, but
he should have. I mean, you've got to give Mir Hamza the new ball for a couple of overs because he swings it. But then they brought Hassan Ali on next, and that was when Jamal had to come on.
Yeah.
And Sajid worked. He got the wicket in his first over, so that did work. But then Salman Agha needed to come on pretty quickly because he was the better spinner through the test.
Yeah, but anyway, Pakistan under Shan Masood, there is a way. There is a sort of a nucleus there. Not everyone in this side's going to make it, but some of them might, some of them could. And they had to rebuild again after 2011, the 2010 saga and drama at Lords. It didn't take long for them to become a serious force in Test cricket again, and I think they're drawing something of a line under a couple of middling years, and I want to believe that under Shan Masood they could be something, and I know we move on to the Windies next, and that's in all probability going to be less competitive than this series. But while they're still playing Test cricket against these nations, we'll rock up and we'll treat them with respect.
Here's hoping. We have a Final Word live show in Sydney tomorrow night. That's Sunday night at the Comedy Store, which is right next to the ground down here, easy to find. Michael Bevan will be our guest. We'll be interviewing him on stage.
Do come if you're on the fence. I spoke to a bloke today who said, I might come. I'm like, what, might come? Might come.
No.
If you're in that might come sort of space now, there's no cricket on day 5. Come to us instead.
Yeah.
It's going to be a bloody great night. These always are. Superb venue. A guest who doesn't do these types of things too often. A childhood hero to many. Doubtless he's going to have a number of belting stories. This is the place to be on Sunday night. The Comedy Store, ticket link in the show notes. Get off the fucking fence, come to our live show.
Get off the fence, and we will get off the fence and get going. This has been the Final Word Daily. We'll have more shows on the podcast feed during the week. We'll have a weekly show, story time, all the other things that we do,
An interview
that we make
coming up as well.
aside from this particular program, and we'll of course be back with the Daily Show from the Test match in Adelaide. That's it. Jeff Lemon, Adam Collins, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.